Saluti a tutti, and welcome to this episode of Ciao DMV, Italian American Life in the DMV. My name is Joseph Barone, and I will be your host. This podcast channel is dedicated to all things Italian and Italian American in the DMV, aka DC, Maryland, and Virginia. My focus is on the Italian American experience, from family stories to little-known history to businesses to cultural events. Mostly the good, but sometimes the not so good. Today, I am pleased to present to you part one of my interview with Mike Riccardi, the CEO of Domenix. According to the website, Domenix is a team of dedicated and experienced defense industry professionals specializing in Department of Defense, DoD support by providing world-class information technology, software and hardware products, system solutions, and cloud services spanning the system development life cycle. I will tell you that Mike's story is truly, and I mean truly, one of hard work, perseverance, and seizing the opportunities when they are presented. So sit back and enjoy episode one. Thank you, Mike, for being with me today.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for having me. I enjoy speaking about my past.
So, Mike, tell me about, as I do with all of these interviews, tell me about where your family is from originally.
Okay. My father was born in Sturno, Italy, which is in the Campania region and part of the province of Avellino.
Okay.
And my mom is from a nearing town called Carife,
Okay.
which happens to be about 5-6 kilometers away.
Okay.
And they met, obviously, through these feasts that they go to, and they got married around age of 25 each.
Okay. And that would be about what year?
Oh, they were both born in 1927,
Okay.
and they got married at 25, so probably 53, if I do the math correctly.
Okay. Okay. And now, my understanding is you were born there and not in the U.S. Is that correct?
Exactly. I was born in Sturno, Italy, in 1960.
Okay.
October.
Okay. And so when did you come over to the U.S.?
So that's a great story because what happened was my dad had come over a year before because work in Italy was a little skid in '65, and his brother had immigrated. My family's been coming back and forth to the U.S. since the 1800s, and they planted their roots in Brooklyn, New York. And so my uncle came over first. He had been working here for a while as a cabinet maker. Mm-hmm. And he got my dad a job with the union as a cabinet maker. So he came in '65. And my mom was basically, told, hey, I got a place. We can come over, start coming over. So my elder brother and sister, 2 brothers and 1 sister, were already in school, and she couldn't take him out. I was going to start 2nd grade. Mm-hmm. And my mother basically was going to leave me there with my grandmother. And of course, I made a stink on her, and I told her, hey, if you leave, I'm going to die. That's the story she tells me. And so she brought me over in 1967.
1967.
And we came on a boat, which people still to this day think boats were ended at Elisana, but we were still coming over with boats. I came with the Raphael.
Now, your older brother and sister, what were their names?
So Filomena is my oldest sister, born in '53. Giuseppe, which is her name, 54. And my brother Lito was born in 1956.
Now, Filomena is a name that's an old
Very
school
old
name.
Yes, and she goes by Mena because the modern Italians, actually truncate the beginning part to just go with the last 4 letters.
So, you came here in 1967.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember from the short period of time of living in Italy? Any particular tradition or any particular value especially your mom and your grandparents, of course your dad had come here, that you say that really sticks with you to this day?
Hardworking, always doing something, family gatherings, the importance of school, since my mother only had a 5th grade education and my dad had an 8th grade education. He was considered, educated, and so education was a big part. School was a big part, and I think the things I remember was a feeling of always having comfort, always having comfort food or comfort in family, always somebody there to look after you.
Okay. Now, your mom wasn't just simply a housemaker, homemaker, whatever you want to call it, she actually had, if I remember reading correctly, she actually had a business going in the town.
My mom is probably the traditional entrepreneur. She kind of had that ingrained. She actually started a sweater making factory, and they used to make sweaters, the ones that you're wearing right now, the one that I'm wearing, and knitted sweaters. And she used to get the wool over in Body, and she used to get the wool from there, and she used to have about, I remember 6 or 7 operators that used to work with the looms and make the shirt, and they bartered mainly. That was the economics at the time. Money was hardly exchanged, but mainly a lot of bartering going on. So my mom would barter shirts for food.
Now, you said this interesting thing. You said your mom was born in 1927. So she, like your dad, grew up in fascist Italy. And she only went to the 5th grade, which was, my understanding, mandatory at the time.
I think so. Yes.
Yeah. And the reason I say that was my mother, who was born in 29, maybe 29. I remember she only went to the 5th grade, and she said that's because the law said you had to go up to the 5th grade and got a 5th grade education.
Yeah, you may be correct. I don't have the facts there. I'm going to go with yours. I can tell you this: work was required. They literally made everything. I mean, you learn how sauce was made, sausages were made. I mean, they made everything, right? And so there was a lot of sort of hand-me-down traditional values that were handed down, and they were expected to work. In fact, my mother would tell me that during the war, she literally had to separate rocks from grain just to make bread because it got all mashed up because they had to kind of grind it themselves.
Yeah, kind of the tradition, like even with lentils, separating. I remember as a kid, my mom would buy lentils, and I'd have to go through it to take all the little stones out.
Yeah, so it's an amazing kind of thing about whether it was mandatory or not. I don't know. I just know that they valued education, but of course they were forced to work.
So even in the 60s, life was not that great then in the town. And so your dad came here, got a job as a carpenter, making cabinets, called for your mom, come on over, and you came over with your mom, whereas the other siblings stayed for a while.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah.
So you were in Brooklyn. You lived in
the sales place, which was actually Bushwick Avenue, which was an Italian community at the time.
And then things were going well, and then the rest of the family came over. Did they come over the following year?
So they kind of came over in steps. As school finished, if you will, my mom would kind of bring them over. So first my brother Joe came over in 68. Then my brother Lino and Minnie came in 71, both of them having finished their respective, school structure. So my sister was starting college, my brother Lino was starting high school. Joe came here to start high school.
Okay, so you're all here now in Brooklyn. Dad is working. Mom is taking care of you.
No. Mom used to leave us at 5 in the morning and leave us with the neighbor down the street. And she would basically run off to the sweat factories down in downtown Brooklyn. And she used to make leather jackets. And she was a seamstress because she had learned the trade when she ran her clothing business. So she worked every day.
However, and things were going well. In fact,
so,
my understanding, things were going so well, you moved out to Long Island.
Well, yeah. So the interesting part there is that the neighborhood in Brooklyn, as we got into the 70s, started getting really bad for white, if you will, especially immigrant Italians, if you will. So my dad and all the Italians had moved out. Most of them moved to Staten Island. They moved to parts of Queens, Ozone Park, and our town, Sturno, Italy, had created almost a sistership with Glen Cove, Long Island. Because a lot of the Italians had moved there. Construction, landscaping, and the other sorts of things that the Italians did back in those days. So my dad had his friends who lived there, so he ended up moving to Glen Cove, Long Island. Found a house.
Now, for those who don't know, where is Glen Cove in Long Island? Is it North-South Shore, and I believe it's Nassau County, correct?
It is. It's Nassau County. It's the North Shore. It's anchored by Port Washington on the east side, and is anchored by Bayville on the west side. And for the most part, it sits in what used to be called Mosquito Cove. It used to be where the robber barons used to live. In fact, J.P. Morgan had an island that he owned there, and the Vanderbilts and all those. So it's a very, very famous place. In fact, it's famous enough because the Russian had their embassy there. And if you remember, the Kennedys had their Kennedy compound there, so there was a lot of political wranglings going on in Glen Cove.
So things are going well. Dad is doing fine. Mom is doing fine. You're in school. You're starting to get the hang of the language eventually. And then,
Fifth grade, I might add, because it took me back a year.
okay.
I was an October baby, so
Okay.
in fifth grade, doing very well. I had skipped. They were planning on skipping me because they felt that I kind of achieved that. And around 72, well, it happened in 72. It happened early 72. My dad came down with a condition where he needed open heart surgery.
Okay.
And he had that. It was successful, St. Francis Hospital. But 3 months later, he went in for gallstone, and he supposedly, and I don't know all the facts, unclear, but he died on the operating table. And so in 1972, in May 1st, Dad passed away.
And so now the time of struggle really begins here in America with you and your siblings.
So yeah, my mom at that point is kind of devastated.
Of course.
She still used to go to Brooklyn. She used to travel, walk to the train station, which was Glencoe Station,
Okay.
which was about a mile and a half from our home. She would walk there, take the train in early in the morning, and come back late at night. So she still had that routine. When my dad died, she kept that routine as best as she could. But my sister took on more responsibility. My older brother took on more responsibility, and they all went to work at a restaurant at the time, and so did my little brother. So they were working at an Italian restaurant called Teresa's.
And was that was also in Glen Cove?
That was in Glen Cove because my brothers and sisters were taught to be ambitious, right? So they wanted to make their own money. So they had taken a job with this Neapolitan guy called Jerry Commisso, and so they worked there. So when my dad passed away, I went ahead and took a job there as well as a dishwasher.
Okay.
And so I started washing dishes for $7 a night. I used to work Friday, Saturday, and Sundays. And then my brothers both worked there, and my sister worked there as a waitress. So we kind of got into the restaurant business.
And in a sense, you at least got to eat at least.
We did. So we all brought whatever money we had. We gave it to my mom for the most part. So with her measly, I guess, seamstress salary of $160 a week, we made ends meet because she had a $22,000 mortgage at 7.5% back then.
That's a lot. Yes,
it was. And so luckily for her, my dad being part of a union got a lump sum distribution because they didn't want to pay him forever.
Right.
So they gave a lump sum, and she used that money to pay down the mortgage to get it to a more reasonable cost.
Okay. So you're in school.
Mm.
You're working at Teresa's restaurant. And how's it going at school?
Not too good because obviously I'm working late nights. Not having that my dad sort of kind of keeping an eye on me, I guess school became a secondary choice. And the freedoms that you get from what had started as something called Plan, which was a new way to teach kids that were gifted and talented, as I had shown. They let you basically do your own coursework by having these sort of boxes where each of the studies were in these cue cards, and you took the cue cards and you had to take your own self-test, and the answers were in the back, and you self-corrected.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a smart kid, I guess. I'm like, hey, look, the answer's right there. I can go play right across the street. I just fill these out, put them in. So that became my education for the latter part of the 5th grade.
So things didn't go well for a while in school.
Oh, no.
But you had some good teachers, my understanding is.
Yep. Miss Swenson, who basically, my 7th grade teacher, saw that I was actually cheating. And she said to me, at least pick a smart kid to cheat on, because that's the biggest dummy in the class. And so she took a little pity on me. She happened to live on Elm Street, which was a walk that I used to take because my mom couldn't afford the bus. They started charging for bus service.
Okay.
So I had to walk to school for the most part. So what I ended up doing was passing by her house. Eventually she said, hey, stop by. And because my brothers and mother didn't have enough time to help me, she kind of took the issue, started helping me, and I got straight A's after tutoring, and that sort of put me back in what they call R1, because I was in R3 in 6th grade, and the latter, most of the 7th grade, but by 8th grade I was in R1, and then I ended up going to the Regents program.
Okay. So let's move on to high school.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening in high school?
So now my mother, because my brother had convinced the owner to lease him the place while he went to Italy, so he took over the place, and he started to make some pretty good money. And my brother, being at the time 18, roughly 19, spent quite a bit of that money, because an 18-year-old with money is, how that goes, right?
Yeah.
So my mom saw that, and she said, hey, by the way, I gave you the initial dollars to give to that guy to give you a deposit. I'm going to take over the place, and you work for me. So we ended up starting to work for my mom.
Okay.
She gave up her job. She became full-time in the restaurant. But that requires more hours. My mom was a businesswoman. So we were open until 1, 2 in the morning. And that also kind of interfered with my schooling.
Mm-hmm.
My mother did not expect me to not do good in school, but neither did she know how bad I was doing because basically I kind of duped her into letting her know that things are going well, and she didn't think anything other than trust me.
Yeah.
Okay? So basically, it was not going too well. Lots of friends. High school. You know how that goes, right? But around the junior grade, math teacher, had who I know, Miss Swanson, said, you're a pretty gifted math guy. There's no reason why you should not be in advanced courses. So Mr. Atkinson took an interest in me and sort of also pushed me. So eventually my grades got better, and he gave me some bits about how to get into colleges and what I should go to. So that's how I ended up in college, basically.
Excellent. So you got into college, and your degree was in what?
So I started out in National Community College because I couldn't afford
Right.
regular college. Plus, my grades were not that good, so I couldn't get to any school. But Mr. Atkinson had told me, "Hey, go to a 2-year school. Don't graduate. Get your cum to about 3.0, and you can go to any school in the state that you want."
Now, at the same time you're in college, you're also doing other odd jobs. You're
Yes.
working in the restaurant.
So my mother had sold the restaurant.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So my mother around 78 sold the restaurant like a year before well, she did not sell the restaurant. The owner came back and took over the restaurant. My two brothers already had opened up another restaurant
Okay.
in Westbury, Long
Okay.
Island, and it's called Enrico's Operate Your Table. So they started that. So I would work there on the weekends with my brother. Helping out, and then I had odd jobs. I had jobs at the grocery store. I had jobs at gas stations. I took on various jobs of landscaping. So I did all odds and ends to make money, and then I ventured into a factory that a friend of mine told me about called Multiwire. And he says, "Oh, these guys make circuit boards, really cool stuff." So
Before we get into multi-wire, thinking back at that time, restaurant business, all these other little jobs, what were one or two of the key lessons, other than working hard and giving mom the money? What were one or two of the other lessons that you kind of learned from that time that you especially still carry to this day?
So it's a great question, and I got to tell you, I thought about that quite a bit as I went through my sort of, knowing that we're going to be having this kind of interview, and I figured you're going to ask me about certain things, and I felt that you would ask me something like that. Here's what I took away. Every job I took, I always wanted to be the best at that job. I took pride whether I was sweeping the floors, washing the dishes, washing the pots. If I washed that pot was the shiniest pot. If I was in the produce section, those things were going to be stacked to the max. If I was working whatever job, I was going to be the best that I could be. And in some cases got me into trouble because some of the owners didn't want me to be the best. They wanted me to kind of elongate things so I wouldn't do them as efficiently because they lose money on efficiency. So that was one of my, sort of lessons learned. Efficiency sometimes does not yield praise.
Yeah, I got that lesson, yes, a couple of times too. I got yelled at in previous jobs being too efficient, doing the best that you could, etc. Yeah, I learned that lesson too.
It's the lesson I think I come away with.
But I still, to be honest with you, I still do my best. No matter what the job is, I don't care. I still do the best. If I get yelled at, I get yelled at. I don't care.
And that's why you kind of venture into your own sort of domain. You create your own environment so you can do that and praise yourself for it.
Okay. So tell me about Multiwire. How did you wind up getting into there?
So that's an interesting, and I think it's worth telling. So there's a gentleman by the name. Remember, Glen Cove now is full of Italians, Polish, German, mainly German Jews, and probably a 20% population of African Americans and Hispanics. The Italians were the ghetto people originally, a place called the Orchard.
Okay.
But as the Italians moved up into different neighborhoods, the Orchard became more of a refuge for the next generation of people who came out, mainly people from South America. For me, the Italian culture was rising up, and so jobs in the banks, jobs in factories were the go-to places. Landscaping, bricklaying, those were considered lower end jobs. And as the immigrants came over, they took on some more of those jobs. So I went into this factory called Multiwire that were making state-of-the-art circuit boards. And the guy who managed the place was Domenix was his name. A big, robust man. He reminded me of Pluto from Popeye. He had the beard to go with it, too. And I walk in because that's just how I was. And I walked in and I said, "Hey, I want to work here."
Mm-hmm.
And the guy laughed. He was the general manager. He's like, "Why are you talking to me?" I said, "Who's the boss?" And they said, "You." And he goes, "Go put an application." So he sends me up to the front office. I put an application. They don't call me for 3 months. So I go back down there. I said, "Look, I really want a job here." And he says to me, "You put the application?" Yeah, they don't call me. He goes, "Sorry." I said, "How about if I work for free?" He said to me, "You can't work for free." I said, "No, I'll work for free. I'll prove that I'm good enough that you're going to want to pay me." He goes, "Would you work second shift?" I said, "Sure." He goes, "Go talk to," and he said these words, but he used a slang.
Mm-hmm.
"Go talk to the Polak and see what he can do." So I went there and I asked him. He gave me a job, started at 3 to 11 at night, and that's how I got into working with multi-wire. And I was a drilling NC machine operator. In other words, they had machines
Mm-hmm.
called true drills that actually punched the holes into these circuit boards based upon a program that you slap into these little pieces.
Mm-hmm.
What was then little mini computers.
Okay. Now, while you're at
Wire.
wire, you see someone, you meet this gentleman, and this gentleman really changes the course of your life. And who is that person?
His name is George Thompson. And George Thompson, I come to find out, was not an educated person, self-taught programmer that ran what they call the Management Information System shop. He wrote all the software for those machines that I used. And also, he had done more elaborate, sophisticated software for process control and office, in this case, factory automation. So he did a lot of that work back then. We're talking back in 79, 1980. The reason why I went to him is because I asked the guy who's the manager, who writes this stuff that I use? You know, these little floppy things that I put in there and I put. He goes, "This guy George Thompson." So I did see him walking down the hall one day because he kind of goes out, didn't expect. And I stopped over and I said to him, "Hey, I heard you write all the software." He goes, "Yeah, I do." I said, "Well, how do I learn to do what you do?" He goes, "Well, you go to college and you get yourself a computer science degree." I said, "Oh. Well, if I go to college and get a computer science degree, how can I do what you do?" He goes, "You go to college, get a computer science degree, come back here after you're done, and I'll see if I have a job for you. How's that?" I said, "Sure." And that became how I went to National Community College, focused on computer science, went through 3 semesters, went to Buffalo University, who at the time was the better school for computer science, came back, put my application, he gave me a job literally a month after I put the application in. So I started to work for him at 22 at the time, or 21, and at $27,000 a year.
That was a good salary at that time.
Yeah.
That was a pretty decent salary.
There was. And I got to tell you, he became not only my manager, he became my mentor, showed me how to invest, taught me about T. Rowe Price and other investment options.
So he did much more than just show you how to code in a sense. He actually taught you how to use your money and invest it wisely.
He did. He was he reminds me of the Warren Buffett at the time.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Now, you're there, you're working, you're happy with George, and?
Well, the company was growing. We had our first thing was we hit the $1 million month. Mm-hmm. We were going to meet $1.5 million a month. They were moving the place from Glen Cove to Hempstead, brand new facilities, move over to that. George happens to hire a woman. He decides to elevate her and demote George because he didn't have a degree. Mm-hmm. She did. And she proceeds to tell me that I remind her of her ex-husband. And so that was not going to be a friendly place. At college, I was going for my graduate degree. Lou, who was my professor for computer science, in class, said to me, "Hey, you're pretty good at this stuff. You want a job?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, I'm the manager at United Technologies. I could use somebody like you to work for us." I said, "Well, I have this job, but I'm not too happy." He goes, "Go put an application in." And sure enough, I go to put an application at United Technologies. And that's where I find out that I'm not a citizen because I only had a green card. So I had to, that was a fast pace to get myself my citizenship. Mm-hmm. And then eventually I took a job with Mr. Lou.
And did the company help you at all? Or you did that all your own?
All my own. All the company did was give me what I call the expedition papers, the justification to fast track it.
Okay. So you work now for United Technologies.
Mhm.
Now, of course, I think the lesson that you learned at
Multi-wire.
Multiwise is that, as good as you are, as hardworking as you are, new management comes in and they can change everything around in an instant.
Instant. And it could be because of their direction and where they want to go,
Mhm.
the people that they like, the people they want to have
Right.
working for them. So it's more of a personality thing at that point, and not so much about your qualification. Because a lot of times, at least in those days, um, the technology was slow paced. You know, most people coming out of college had newer skills. So, the value that you had by being there didn't usually equate to much because the technology was moving
Fast.
well, fast enough where people coming out of college,
Right.
Yeah.
I hope that you have enjoyed part 1. In the next episode, Mike will continue on talking about his journey of hard work, perseverance, and seizing opportunities when presented. And if you're interested in being on this podcast, please feel free to contact me at ciaodmv@gmail.com. That's ciaodmv@gmail.com. And please remember, if you enjoyed listening to this episode, please take a moment to like, comment, subscribe, and or share with a friend. This is Joseph Barone, your host, signing out. Ciao for now.